Worldcomedue. Elite Children's Classics.
World's Literary Masterpieces. A Dog of Flanders. There lived a very old man in a small hut on the outskirts of a little village which was about 3 miles from Antwerp. His name was Jehan Daas. When he was young, he was a soldier. During a battle, he became lame. When he was 80 years old, his daughter died, and she left him her 2-year-old son. Though Jehan Daas had very little food to eat every day, he brought up the child with pleasure. The child soon became a precious thing to him. Little Nello grew strong and healthy, and the old man and the little child lived in the poor, small hut happily. They had a friend and comforter. Patrasche was his name. He was strong and kind and loyal. He was not a man, but a great yellow dog. Patrasche had thick fur, a large head, large legs, and ears which stood upright like a wolf's. His legs were bowed, his feet were wide, and his muscles were made strong by many years of hard work. Before Patrasche was 13 months old, he was sold to a hardware dealer for a small price. Patrasche was always yelled at and was often hit with a stick. When he was young, he knew the pain of the cart and the collar. His master always traveled around the land, north and south, from the blue seas to the mountains. He was a very cruel man and drank too much wine. He made Patrasche draw the heavy cart, which was full of things such as pots and buckets, while he himself walked beside the cart idly smoking his black pipe. And he stopped at every wine shop or coffee house along the road. One day, 2 years later, Patrasche was going on as usual along one of the straight, dusty roads that led to the city of Antwerp. It was midsummer and very hot. The sun was shining brightly over his head. His cart was very heavy. He was very hungry and thirsty. He suddenly staggered and foamed a little at the mouth and fell. His master kicked him and hit him with a stick, but he was not able to move, so his master thought him dead and kicked his body heavily aside into the grassy ditch. After yelling at him, his master went away pulling the cart along the road. Patrasche lay in the ditch. That day there was a lot of traffic on the road, and hundreds of people were coming and going, on foot and on mules, in wagons and in carts. Some saw him, but most of the people didn't even glance at him. After a time, there came a little old man with a little child. When the old man looked at Patrasche, he stopped, then kneeled down in the grass near the ditch and examined the dog carefully with kindly eyes. The child, too, stood looking at the poor dog. It was the first time that little Nello and big Patrasche met. That day, old Jehan Daas took this dog to his own little hut and took good care of him. Patrasche became better and better day by day, and after many weeks he was able to stand up again on his 4 legs. Old Jehan Daas made his living by carrying the milk cans of the neighbors away to the town of Antwerp. The work was hard for the lame old man. One morning, before the old man touched the cart, Patrasche got up and walked to it and placed himself between its handles. By doing so, he showed that he could do the work. At first, Jehan Daas didn't want to let Patrasche draw the cart, but Patrasche wouldn't step aside. The old man at last let him do the work. After that, Patrasche did this work every morning. When winter came, Jehan Daas thanked God for bringing him the dying dog in the ditch on that fair day, because he was very old and he grew weaker year after year. Without Patrasche, Jehan Daas was not able to pull the cart of milk cans along the deep muddy road on snowy days. Patrasche was very happy. It seemed that it was his pleasure to carry this little green cart with its bright brass cans. The gentle old man always walked beside him, patted him, and spoke kindly to him. His work was over at 3 or 4 in the afternoon. After that time, he could do anything he wanted to do. He slept in the sun, walked around the fields, ran with the young child, and played with other dogs. A few years later, old Jehan Daas lost the use of his limbs on account of rheumatism. He couldn't go to town with the cart, so little Nello, who was now 6 years old, took his place and carried the milk. Nello and Patrasche did the work so well and so joyfully together that Jehan Daas didn't have to go to work when the summer came, and he was better again. Years passed in this way, and Nello and Patrasche lived together happily and safely. They were as poor and hungry as before, but they were always very happy. But Patrasche became uneasy about something. There were a lot of majestic old stone buildings in Antwerp. Little Nello went into one of the buildings many times, but Patrasche had to stay on the sidewalk and wait for him to come out. Once or twice, Patrasche tried to follow him with his milk cart behind him in order to see what made Nello go into the building, but Patrasche was stopped by a guard in black clothes. When Nello came out of the building, he was not quite himself. He always had a red or pale face. The building was a church. On those days when he went to the church, he never played. Instead, he sat silently and looked up at the evening skies beyond the line of the canal. Patrasche wondered. He thought it was not good or natural for a young boy like Nello to be so serious. So he tried to keep Nello beside him in the sunny fields or in the busy market. But Nello often went to the church. When the time for the doors to close came, Nello came out. The child always put his arms around the dog's neck and kissed him on the forehead, and in a low voice he said the same words. "How I wish to see them, Patrasche! How I wish to see them!"
"What are they?"
thought Patrasche, and looked up with his large friendly eyes. One day, when the guard was not around and the door was left open a little, Patrasche went into the church after his little friend. They were 2 large pictures which had covers on them. They were on each side of the altar. When Nello saw Patrasche, he took him out gently into the street, and his face was wet with tears. As he passed the 2 covered pictures, he looked up at them and said to Patrasche, "I am sorry I can't see them, Patrasche, because I'm poor. I'm sure that Rubens never thought that the poor should not see them when he painted them. I'm sure that he thought he would let us see them every day. How I wish to see the pictures!" But Nello could not see them. He had to pay some money in order to see the 2 pictures. He was too poor. He didn't have any cash to spare. Nello was born into a poor family, was treated very cruelly by fortune, and was not taught how to write. But he was given something which is called genius. No one knew it. He himself didn't know that he had genius. Only Patrasche knew it. He saw the boy draw pictures of many plants and animals with chalk on the stones. He heard the boy say his prayers to the spirit of the great artists in his little bed of hay. Old Jehan Daas always said in his bed to Nello,
When you grow up, you must own this hut and this little piece of ground, and plow the land and be called Sir by your neighbors.
But Nello said nothing. He wanted to be a painter. The district of Flanders had great artists such as Rubens, Van Dyck, and others. Something that ran in their blood was in Nello's blood too. Nello didn't dream of plowing the little land, living under the wattle roof, and being called Sir by neighbors who were a little poorer or a little richer than Nello. He dreamed of other things. He told these dreams only to Patrasche. Nello had another friend whom he could tell his dreams to. She was a girl named Aloise. She lived at the old red mill on the green hill. Her father was a miller and was the richest man in the village. Little Aloise was a pretty girl with soft, dark eyes. Little Aloise was often with Nello and Patrasche. They played in the fields, they ran around in the snow, they collected daisies, they went to the gray old church together, or they often sat together by the fireside in the mill house. Little Aloise was the richest child in the village. She had neither a brother nor a sister. Though she was only 12, the people in the village said to each other that she would make a good wife. She was a simple child and loved Jehan Daas's grandson most of all her playmates. Her father, Coges, had a good heart, but he was somewhat severe. One day he found his little daughter sitting among the hay with the great head of Patrasche on her lap. Nello was drawing on a clean, smooth board of pine wood with a piece of charcoal. The miller stood looking at the picture with tears in his eyes. It was a perfect likeness of his daughter. But soon he scolded the girl and roughly said,
Your mother is calling you. Can't you hear? You must not stay here.
Aloise was afraid and began to cry, but her father made her go back home, and he turned to Nello and took the board of pine wood from Nello's hands and said,
Do you always do such foolish things?
But there was a tremble in his voice. I draw everything I see, Nello said in a low voice. The miller was silent for a while. Then he said,
It's a very foolish thing indeed. It's a waste of time, too. Nevertheless, it looks very much like Aloise. Her mother will be very glad to see this picture. Will you give me the picture for this coin?
He took a franc and gave it to him. Nello lifted his head and put his hands behind his back. Keep the money and the picture, Mr. Coges, he said. You have been good to me. Then he called Patrasche and went away across the field. Nello didn't take the money, and so he couldn't see the pictures in the church. But he said to Patrasche, I wish to see those pictures very much, but I couldn't sell her picture for money. Mr. Coges was worried as he went into his mill house.
We must not let that boy be with Aloise so often,
he said to his wife that night,
because it may invite trouble. He is 15 now, and she is 12, and the boy is handsome.
But he is good and loyal, said his wife.
You are a woman, so you are a fool.
The miller struck his pipe hard on the table.
That boy is no better than a beggar, and he poses as a painter. He's worse than a beggar. Take care that they will not be married in the future, or else I will send her to a convent.
The poor mother was surprised and promised to do as she was told. Thus, Aloise was kept away from her good friend.
This is the end of Side A. Please turn to Side B.
As Nello was a proud, quiet, and sensitive boy, he was saddened. He stopped visiting the old red mill on the slope and ordered Patrasche not to go either. One day, Aloise found Nello by chance alone among the cornfields by the canal and ran to him, held him close, and began to cry. "Why are you crying?" "Tomorrow is my birthday, but my father says that I may not invite you to the party." On Aloise's birthday, Nello and Patrasche went home by themselves to the dark little hut and ate a meal of black bread. At the mill house, all the children of the village were singing and laughing, eating big round cakes, and dancing in the great barn. "Never mind, Patrasche," he said, with his arms round the dog's neck as they both sat at the door of the hut. The sounds of the party at the mill came to them in the night air. "Never mind," said Nello. "It will all be changed by and by." The old man Daas asked,
This is Aloise's birthday, isn't it?
Nello said yes by gesture.
And why don't you go there?
His grandfather asked. "You were too sick for me to leave you," said the boy in a low voice.
What's the matter? Did you quarrel with Aloise?
The old man went on. "No, grandfather, never," said the boy quickly. "To tell you the truth, Mr. Kojes didn't let her invite me to the party."
You have done something wrong, haven't you?
"Nothing. I drew a picture of Aloise on a piece of pine, that's all,"
Ah,
said the old man, and then there was a short silence in the hut. He understood. He drew Nello's head to his chest gently and said in a trembling voice,
you are poor, very poor. God help you.
Then Nello rose and went to the door of the hut, stood in the quiet autumn night, and watched the stars and the tall poplars bow in the wind. Now Nello had a secret which only Patrasche knew. There was a small building beside the hut. Only Nello entered it. Here he made an easel of rough wood and put a great piece of gray paper on it and drew a picture. He had no money to buy paint, and so he drew only in black and white. The figure which he was drawing in chalk was an old man sitting on a fallen tree. Nello hoped to enter this picture in a contest. The contest, they said, would be open to every young man who had talent, scholar or peasant, under 18 years of age. And they also said that a prize of 200 francs a year would be given to the best one, and that 3 of the best artists in the town of Antwerp would choose the best one. It was a cold winter day. At dawn, Nello put the big picture on his little green milk cart and started out. Sometimes his heart danced with hope, and sometimes it sank low with fear. With the help of Patrasche, he took the picture into town and left it with the judges. The results of the contest were to be given on the 24th of December. Nello and Patrasche were coming back from Antwerp. On their way home, they found a pretty doll on the road. It was about 6 inches tall and was all red and golden. It had a tambourine in its hand. Though it was on the road, it was not dirty or damaged at all. It was a nice toy. Nello tried to find its owner, but he could not. He thought Aloise would be very glad to have such a nice doll. It was night when he passed the mill house. He knew the little window of her room. There was a shed with a sloping roof below the window. He climbed it and knocked softly on the window. There was a little light in her room. Aloise opened it and looked out fearfully. Nello put the doll into her hands. "Here is a doll I found in the snow, Aloise. Take it," he said in a soft voice. Before she could thank him, he got down from the shed roof and ran off through the darkness. That night there was a fire at the mill. The mill itself and the main house were safe, but some other buildings and a great deal of corn were burned. All the people in the village ran out of their houses in surprise. The miller was insured and lost nothing, but he became very angry and said that the fire wasn't an accident. Nello was awakened from his sleep and hurried to the mill house to help. Mr. Coges pushed him aside angrily and said roughly, "You were walking around here after dark. I believe that you know more about the fire than anyone else." When Nello heard this, he was surprised, but said nothing. Nevertheless, the miller spoke ill of him to many of the villagers the next day, so some said, "He was seen in the mill yard that night," and others said,
He has a grudge against Mr. Coges because Mr. Coges told him to keep away from his daughter.
The villagers sided with the rich landowner. Their families all hoped to have the riches of Aloise in the future for their sons, so they began to look at Nello coldly and speak ill of him. At the houses and farms where Nello and Patrasche carried the milk every morning, people took a quick look at them and spoke harshly to them. "You are so cruel to the boy," the miller's wife said to her husband. "He is an innocent and honest boy, I'm sure, and his heart may be filled with sorrow, but he would never dream of doing bad things." But Mr. Coges was an obstinate man, so once he said something, he held fast to his opinion, though he knew that he was wrong. One day, a buyer came from Antwerp and began to buy milk from the farms in the village. Almost all of the villagers sold milk to the buyer, but only 3 or 4 took pity on Nello. As the cans which Patrasche drew were very light, the coins in Nello's purse were very small. One night, during the week before Christmas Day, death came into the hut and took Jehan Daas away from this world forever. He had been close to death for a long time. He could not move except for a weak gesture and could only speak softly. But his death was a great horror for the little boy and Patrasche. They cried very hard. The old man died while he was sleeping. On a snowy, cold day, they carried his body to a nameless grave near the little gray church. Only Nello and Patrasche were at his funeral. On the way to the church, they were weeping. The miller's wife didn't say anything, but after the grave was covered and Nello and Patrasche went home, she put a wreath into Aloise's hands and told her to go and lay it on the grave. Nello and Patrasche went home with broken hearts. After the funeral, he did not have a coin left. There was a month's rent on their little home, which he had to pay. So he went to the owner of the hut and asked him to wait. The owner was a very good friend of the miller. He loved money very much, and he said to Nello,
"If you can't pay, leave everything in the hut and get out by tomorrow."
All night long, the boy and the dog sat in the darkness by the fireplace which had no fire. When the pale sun rose over the white, cold earth, it was the morning of Christmas Eve. Nello held Patrasche in his arms, and his hot tears fell on the dog's forehead.
Let's go, Patrasche. We will not wait to be kicked out.
They began to walk to Antwerp. When they got to the city, the clock struck 10. The name of the winner of the drawing contest was to be announced at noon, so Nello went to the public building. On the steps in the hall, there were a lot of young people. They were all with their parents, or relatives, or friends. The great bells of the clock tower rang out the hour of noon. The doors of the inner hall opened, and the people rushed in. The best picture was put above the others. He saw the drawing. It was not his own. Nello fainted. When he came to his senses, he found himself lying on the stones, and Patrasche was trying to call him back to life. The boy staggered to his feet and held the dog in his arms.
It is all over, Patrasche, dear Patrasche,
he said in a weak voice. The snow was falling fast. They went back to the village. It took them a long time to pass over the familiar road. Suddenly, Patrasche stopped, gave a sniff in the snow, and drew out with his teeth a small case of brown leather. On it was the name of Mr. Coget's, and it had 20,000 francs in it. The boy put the case into his pocket, patted Patrasche, and went on. He went straight to the mill house. When he reached the house, he knocked on the door. The miller's wife opened it, weeping. Little Aloise was holding tight to her mother's skirt.
Is it you, poor young boy?
She said kindly through her tears.
You'd better go home before my husband sees you. We are in severe trouble tonight. He is out looking for a large amount of money that he lost on his way home, but in the snow he will never find it. It is heaven's own judgment for the things we have done to you.
Nello put the case in her hand and called Patrasche into the house. Patrasche found the money tonight, he said quickly. Please tell Mr. Coget's. Please ask him to keep the dog here and give him food. I hope he will not say no. Keep Patrasche from running after me. Nello kissed the dog, closed the door quickly, went out of the house, and was gone. Patrasche barked at the door, but it was useless. Aloise and her mother didn't let the dog go out of the house and tried to calm him down. They brought nice cake and juicy meat to him and tried to take him to the warm fireplace, but it was in vain. Patrasche would not leave the closed door. It was 6 o'clock when the miller came in. He was tired, and his face looked as pale as ash.
We couldn't find it.
His voice was trembling.
We have looked for it everywhere with lanterns. It is gone.
His wife put the money into his hands and told him how it came to her. The strong man sank, trembling, into a seat and covered his face because he was ashamed and afraid.
I've been cruel to the young man,
he said in a soft voice.
I don't deserve to be so well treated.
Little Aloise asked her father,
May I invite Nello here again? May I invite him tomorrow?
The miller held her in his arms and said,
Of course, of course. I will invite him here on Christmas Day, and any other day he wants to come. I will make up for my previous wrongs. I will.
Patrasche would neither lie in the warmth near the fireplace nor eat anything. At last Patrasche slipped out of the house when a new guest opened the door carelessly and ran away. He had only one thought, to follow Nello. He thought,
He has gone to find the one he loved.
The gate of the church was open. Patrasche went into the building and found Nello lying on the stones. He went to the boy and licked his face. The boy got up with a moan and held the dog tight in his arms.
"Let's lie down here and die together," he said. "People don't need us. We are all alone."
They lay close together in the severe cold. Suddenly, through the darkness, a great white stream of light appeared. The moon was high in the sky. The moonlight fell on the two pictures through the window. The covers had been removed for Christmas. The pictures, the elevation of the cross and the descent from the cross, were seen. Nello stood up and held out his arms to the pictures. The tears of joy shone on his face.
"I have seen them at last," he cried aloud. "Oh, God, it is enough."
He staggered and sank to his knees. The arms of the boy held the body of the dog to him again. The next morning, the people of Antwerp found them in the church. They were both dead. After the sun rose, an old man came in weeping. He said,
I have been cruel to the boy, and now I have made up my mind to make amends, to give half of my money to him, to make him my son.
After a while, a famous painter came in. He said to the people,
I have been looking for this boy. I'm sorry we didn't give the prize to this boy yesterday. I wanted to find him, take him with me, and teach him art.
But the young pale face was turned upward to the paintings by the great Rubens with a smile which seemed to answer them all.
"It's too late,"
the people cried. The arms of the boy were folded so tightly around the dog that they couldn't separate them. The people of the little village made one grave and laid them to rest side by side forever.